Webcast, and I remind those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Should any person not advise they should leave the meeting room prior to any statements being made. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making the remark. Now call on Councillor Mark Sutherland to do an acknowledgement of the country.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Day Gomeroi, Walla Bagniani Ungalawak, Lambo Mari, Marumara, Ngale Down, Lilia Yanmali, Garamari Skyangel Gomeroi, Namlanginda, Winalanginda, Winangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our families and our community here in Tamworth, making sure that we acknowledge the country that we are on and that we pay respects to our elders who have cared and still care for this country. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland, and I might ask all those who wish to stand for the meeting prayer and call on Senior Pastor James Ardell to please deliver that prayer.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to staff, to councillors and residents, ladies and gentlemen. Almighty Father, we appreciate the God-given nature of our Australian democracy and the peaceful and respectful civil governance at all levels of government. We proclaim that integrity, equity and fairness will be the hallmark of Tamworth Regional Council. We pray that the councillors and staff be wise and considered in their duties and deliberations, and that every decision will bring greater prosperity and a deeper sense of community to the people of Tamworth and our region, through Jesus Christ our Lord.
Thank you, Pastor. Please be seated. Councillors, I'll now call the meeting open, and I'll ask for apologies and leaves of absence. We do have an apology from Councillor Stephen. I move that that be accepted. Seconded.
Could I just ask a question, please, Mr Mayor?
Yes.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to, I was unaware, normally we have a circular email or some sort of notification that there's going to be an inability to be at the council meeting, and I just didn't know, and I was sort of asking about his welfare. Is everything okay? Or is there another issue that he can't be here? That's all.
Through me, Councillor Burke, we did receive a email notification at about 10 to 6 this evening. We got a phone call earlier, but Councillor Mears was not able to access the computer to be able to send an email earlier in the day. He's on recreational leave at the moment.
So I've got a mover and a second to accept that apology. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to community consultation. Item 2, we have no one recorded to speak at community consultation, so we'll move to item 3. Could I have a mover and a second for the minutes that they're a true and correct record, please? Councillor Southwell, second to Councillor Burke. Any questions, any comments on those minutes? I'll put those minutes as being a true and correct record. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Item 4 is a disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest tonight, councillors? We have no disclosures of interest. Move to 5. Item 5 on the agenda, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute. We move to item 6. There is no notice of motion. We move straight into open council reports, and we have an item under environmental and planning, 7.1. Could I have a mover, please? And it's moved Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Tickle. Councillor Sutherland, do you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move on to item 7.2, waste sustainability. Could I have a move in a second? I move Councillor Cade, second to Councillor Southwell. You wish to speak to that, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just briefly, I actually want to thank Rachel for a really comprehensive report. I was quite blown away by the kind of resources that we have in this particular area, and I just want to commend her for what she's actually put in there. I also want to say that, you know, as an organisation, we're actually setting the scene. We're not just talking the talk, we're walking the walk in terms of what other organisations and businesses and should be doing. But there's one thing I'd like to say is that there's a lot of other people coming on board, including builders, etc. But I would really like to see our local health district as one of the biggest employers and probably one of the biggest users of disposables join us in this journey on actually the waste sustainability. But I think in the end, with what we're doing, the winner's going to be the environment, but so are also we as council in terms of the life of our landfill. So thank you again.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments on that, Mr. Councillor Burke?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it's a really community embracing type of report, this one, with regards to the more community embraces it, the more successful it is. And Mr. Mayor, as a farmer and a person who uses a lot of ag chem in our operation, we pay a levy on each drum of chemical that we buy, and I must say that 3.36 tonne being received back in by way of the drum master is quite disappointing. When I visit my peers and my friends in the industry, you often see a lot of drums that would have paid that deposit on it, so that it could that fee on it, so that it could be returned to council. And I just think that if they're not coming in here, where are they going? And if they're going somewhere else, it's a disappointment and a pity, because we all purport to represent and want to have a clean environment. And these things, there is a pathway for them to go back into the council tip there to be held for the drum master recycling. And I'd like to think that it's one of the ones that we could do better. Batteries, household batteries, mattresses, there's some really clangers in here, and I know that we don't bury mattresses anymore, or we held them, but we've got to do rubbish better and waste better, and I'd like to think that when there's an opportunity for that, that we can enhance what we do better and get a better result in the environment. Mr. Mayor, the other one that concerns me is tyres, and have always been a massive issue for us, and there was, I thought, and you might be able to help refresh me here, I thought that there was a particular investor who recycles and makes use out of old tyres, and I'd just like to see if we could get any sort of update in terms of, is that business proposal still active, or is it dead? If it's dead, is it something that we could reactivate and hopefully again get these tyres that are on farms, in trucking depots, in tyre repair places, to a better outcome and use. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Burke. Yeah, there was a few years ago, there was quite a lot of conversation around that particular subject. Bruce, can I ask you, have you got any updates on anything in terms of tyres?
Mr. Mayor, we don't, other than we did have some discussions with a businessman who was interested in, but that didn't go anywhere. That hasn't progressed. We don't bury tyres. We do make them. We give them to a third party who takes them away and processes them, but certainly not a local. I share your concerns, Councillor Burke. We need to do more with tyres, but it's about the cost and how do we pass on a fair share of the cost of disposal to the people who are and still encourage people to dispose of them.
Further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment, I think in terms of the building comments here, consultations underway with builders. I've had a chat to some local builders about the opportunity to possibly segregate waste a little bit more. There was a mixed response. Some, keen to pursue the idea further, but mostly the general consensus was it's a very, very difficult thing to do. The skip bins are obviously put out, and it's just a lot easier for them to put it all in the one. It was explained to me that in order to separate the waste, there'd have to be different, basically, buckets throughout the site, so that things could go into different buckets. But you would know yourself as a builder, just the practicality side of that. And I think we really need support from possibly the state or even federal government to see how could this actually look, what would it look like on the ground, because the practicality side of having a skip bin is it's a lot easier. Where would they actually put these other buckets where they could separate different, materials? So that was just a comment that came through to me from from some of the builders. So I think great intentions here, but seeing it on the ground, I think we've got a very, very long way to go with that. I was really happy to see that the Kirby program, just to see that I think there was 16.1 tonne of soft plastics removed from landfills since it started, which is really, really good to see. But yeah, I think we're doing some great stuff in this space, but we've still got a long way to go, and we really need support from all levels of government to be more successful in this area.
Thanks, Councillor South. We'll just add to your comments about the building waste. There'll be some work done on that, I believe, into the future, and the new council will have to, whoever's elected will have to make some decisions on how that's going to work, but I think you'd be probably looking at 3 bins per site to actually accommodate what would be needed to do what is needed to be done there. I know whether Bruce wants to make a comment on that.
Not really, Mr. Mayor, but I think you're right. My view is that one large skip bin is not going to be sufficient. So we're going to have smaller bins. What do they look like, and how do we make that accessible to the building community? And then there will be some sort of incentive based on price. Is that if you bring up sorted waste, then the price will be less than if you bring up mixed waste. So I think that's about the only approach that we can take. But we are going to consult with the building industry and see what they think. Is a way of reducing the amount of construction and demolition waste that goes into the landfill.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just quickly, I did think the audit of yellow bins was a good thing, and a good reminder to residents about what you can and can't put in a yellow bin. I believe I got a blue and an orange, and so it wasn't perfect. I think it was a blown light bulb or something like that I thought could go in the yellow bin, but obviously not. But largely I thought it was a good reminder about what things are certainly good to, they're good to go in yellow bins and those that aren't. And also I signed up to Kirby when it started and throw plenty of that in, and I think that was the reason for the orange, perhaps. It was a bit of loose plastic, not in a Kirby bag, so that was the problem. But anyway, I thought it was a good reminder, and I did see the people doing the audits. I thought they were particularly brave going out at night with their headlamps on, mooching through people's bins, but I thought it was a good outcome.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move straight into infrastructure and services. We've got 8.1, the committee. Brother Mover, Councillor Bett, seconded Councillor Sutherland. You wish to speak there, Councillor Bett? Anyone wish to speak against the recommendations there? Further comments on those recommendations? Councillor Southwell.
Just a query on item 2, Mr Mayor, which we're obviously installing the temporary disabled parking space, and I just wondered if there was a need for more permanent additional disabled parking spaces on Fitzroy Street, or if that had been assessed and there was no need. I just wondered if that had been discussed in the traffic committee at all.
Well, we have the chair of the committee and the engineer who would like to take that question.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think that disabled parking was assessed for the CBD when the parking strategy was put together, so I'd be assuming that what's there is appropriate at the moment.
Yes, correct. Yeah. Further comments, further questions? Councillor Burt.
Mr Mayor, this particular polling booth that's going here that we're making an extra provision for, on the electoral site it's saying that they're predicting that 25% of the total votes in Tamworth TRC will occur there. I'm just wondering, people that come in to vote will be reasonably quick, I would imagine, in terms of what they do and their transaction. Clearly, if these ones are both not being used, is there some sort of dual occupancy or some sort of capacity for us to say, provided that they're both empty, someone may be able to come in, or clearly it's out of the game, I'm seeing by the shake of heads.
Councillor Burke, I think once it's designated, the legislation, the way it's written, probably would not allow that. Don't know, Murray, if you want to comment on that. I don't think we can actually let people park in a in a wheelchair zone
Yeah, I think
unless they've got a tag.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it would just be enforced as the signage was applied. It would be difficult to put in some sort of alternative arrangement there.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Burke.
Just a
one
question.
Yeah.
Just a question, if that's the case, then could we, with the balance of the car parks, have them designated for voting only, please?
No.
That usually happens.
Might be a difficult one, but
Ridiculously.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I probably have to take that on notice because I'm not sure how you would enforce it, but we'll see what we can do.
we haven't done it in the past, and it's worked okay in the past when we were at 474, so I don't know, we'll take that on notice. Particularly.
I think just on that, occasionally they have been mapped out more, but it's worth noting that it's only one of three places, pre-polling venues, and the other two are completely flat three. Three. But the general manager was looking doubtful at me there. So the other two have ample parking and ample level access. So people don't have to negotiate the steepness out here in Fitzroy Street necessarily.
Council ticket, it'll be up to the voting public to determine where they go. We can't really tell them where to go, so where they choose, and as Councillor Burke said, the electoral website is suggesting that 25% of those votes will be cast here at this facility. Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move from there on to the Energy Sustainability Report. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Coates. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, just briefly, Mr Mayor, just to say that it's great to see progress in this space that's aligning with our sustainability strategy. I know we've set some aspirational goals and targets within that, and to get a report on how that's tracking and the work and the progress that's happened against those outcomes is fantastic to see.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation that report be received and noted? No. Further comments? No further comments? Councillor Burke.
Mr Mayor, I can't help myself when we're talking about solar on roofs. Congratulations to Rapid Plas for their ingenious design of actually spelling their business on that massive shed as you fly back into Tamworth by leaving gaps in the solar panels. And I can't find it now, but I remember reading, what could we do to make the solar things on the Trek, for example, more enhanced. And I think that's a way that we can do it, is to either welcome people to Tamworth or say, hi, I'm Trek, or something by the design of the solar panels. And I think that's a very clever move by Rapid Plas.
Further comments, councillors? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move from there on to governance and strategy. 9.1, annual operational plan variation. Do I have a move in the seconder? Councillor Southall, seconded Councillor Sutherland. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Southall?
I think.
Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Any further comments? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Councillors, will move to item 9.2, council investments. Do we have a move in the seconder? Move Councillor Coates, seconded Councillor Tickle. Wish to speak to that, Councillor Coates? Anyone wish to speak against that recommendation to receive and note? Further comments on that recommendation? Councillor
Just
Rodder.
quickly, Mr Mayor, a question. Members of the public mentioned that they tried to access the annexure to 9.2. Was it not available to the public? Would there have been a reason? Apparently on the website it was not available.
Well, it doesn't say
No,
the annexes are confidential, so I'd assume they would be available. So I can't answer that question.
It was kind of in amongst some other things, so whether that, they didn't pick that up.
Can't answer that question, Mr.
No.
General Manager.
I don't know, Mr. Take it on notice and find out where the annexure is.
Unless those annexures are marked as confidential, they are always available to the public. Further comments on that report? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move straight into number 3, the audit, risk and improvement. Moved Councillor Cade, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Wish to speak to that, Councillor Cade?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and please just bear with me. I just wanted to actually point out the last meeting that we had at the Audit and Risk Committee. There was quite a lot of things covered there, and I guess the important thing for anyone that's coming on as a new councillor, they're actually going to have some workshops which will be scheduled fairly soon after the council. I think that's really important, given that the ARIC committee doesn't, or the ARIC doesn't actually get a lot of play and a lot of importance on it. As part of that meeting, we also had a status report from the external auditor, and I think next week they're starting their final audit to complete that process. There was an update on the continuous improvement of a lot of council systems and practices, and they were provided from across a lot of the areas of council, and they were either in service delivery or cost savings. So that was really, for me, that was quite a revealing part of the report. There was also a lot of work that's been done for employee culture, with the aim of being to attract and retain employees and to support council as an employer of choice. And I think that at this time when we're trying to get qualified staff and to have people come on board and actually choose us to be with, a lot of the work that they've put into that area will really support people in that space. But it also included targets for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to actually mirror the demographics of the general community, which at the moment it doesn't do that. The Enterprise Risk Management Framework has been rolled out, and now it's about embedding that into our systems and framework. And last but not least, there's a draft plan to meet the ARIC's prescriptive obligations under the OLG guidelines, and that's something new. It hasn't actually existed before. It won't change what the Tamworth ARIC is doing, because they've pretty much met those guidelines along the way, but it was quite an informative meeting, and that's been one of the committees I've very much enjoyed being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cade. Anyone wish to speak against that report recommendation? Any further comments on that report recommendation? It's a committee that I know, Councillor Cade, you've been very involved in, and thank you for the work you've done on that. I'll put that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We'll move now on to item 10, community services. We have one item there, 10.1. Move Councillor Betts, second to Councillor Cade. She was to speak to that, Councillor Betts.
Sure do, Mr Mayor. This is great news. Some time back, there was quite some soothsayers out there that said that this hall, the Katingal Hall, wasn't going to be happen, and it was going to be demolished and that. But to see a report like this that reflects where the facility's at is absolutely brilliant. And stuck my nose in there a couple of weeks ago, and it's a magnificent facility, and I think the community will be proud. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Further, anyone wish to speak against the recommendation on the fees and charge? Any further comments on it?
Question, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ryder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to the hall, now that it's all but finished, upgrade to it, will the 355 committee be re-established for the administration of that hall, and if not, why not?
I'm not quite sure whether I can answer that.
Mr Mayor, that decision hasn't been made yet, and it will need to be discussed. The previous resolution was that it be considered at the time when the hall and the line was finished. So it would make sense by the time the building is actually ready to go that there's a discussion with the new council. So it's not really a decision for us to make.
Thank you, Gina. That satisfy your...
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further questions? No further questions. I'll move that recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors and members of the public, one of the shortest meetings we've had after the longest one we had last time. Longest meeting I think we had at the last meeting. That's the end of that. There's no reports to be considered in closed council. So